Hello, my name is Fisker Karma on Instagram, and I thought it was finally time for me to make a YouTube channel. I've been collecting soccer cards for 5 years now, and so we're going to start with the typical introductory video of how I got here in the first place, and flip this around to what I'm collecting now in my journey in soccer cards. Let's get into it. So I certainly didn't find myself in cards and then start watching the sport and learning about it and figuring out what players to collect. It's really been a lifelong evolution to get to this point. And for me specifically, it starts with baseball. Baseball is a big part of American culture, and I played it every day from a super, super young age. Um, my dad had collected football cards in the 80s and kind of introduced that to me, as well as teammates kind of getting involved themselves in collecting cards. After 2 years of just a quick amount of time, I found myself with a little bit of a collection, with no direction of what to collect. But I just bought what I enjoyed, open packs, boxes, and I had a really great opportunity to do that through a card shop. I had the ability to buy singles, talk to the card shop owner, but mostly buy packs or boxes whenever I had the free cash to do so. There was also eBay at the time, which was a little younger, and it was cool to see what was available. I certainly couldn't buy anything because they didn't take cash. But for me myself, it was cool to go on there and see the astronomical values that things would go for. It blew my mind at the time, but it really helped me understand that there was value associated to these cards and kind of a market. It was my first example of seeing things go up and down. It was really just about making something cool, building for the future, and collecting. I never had a single interest in Pokemon. I never even opened a pack at my younger age. I was very dedicated specifically to baseball. Something that really helped me do that um, was these Beckett's. These were huge, and these took up my time. I got these once a month, and not all of them were big. Some of them a little smaller, more palatable. But this really curated my understanding of what was collectible and what was cool. So Beckett magazine was a huge influence, despite me never once collecting a Beckett slab in my younger age. Why didn't I collect Beckett slabs? I simply saw PSA, Beckett, and any other grading service as kind of the adult way to collect. Whenever I went into card shops, it was much cheaper to buy raw than to buy a PSA 10 or a BGS 9.5. Um, as well as on the vintage side, all my vintage cards I kept just in sleeves, in cases, and I really didn't even think about grading them until I got much, much older. Now, the collection I kind of finished off with at the end of the decade was full of autographs, full of patches, and was definitely focused on the modern side of things. And I would have probably continued to collect well into my older age if it wasn't for soccer. I completely stopped collecting after 10 years of doing baseball cards. And in large part, that was because of Messi and Ronaldo. These guys were appearing on ESPN top 10 highlights in the morning just about every weekend. The buzz around these guys when they were scoring 60 goals around 2012, 2013 was next level. Even an American who loved baseball, who had his head in the sand when it came to any other sport, was introduced to these two breaking records and literally, I don't know, how do you describe this? I mean, the world was on watch for these two. And Neymar at the time as well. He was really the first prospect I saw where people were hyping him up, thinking he's the next Pele. And while Messi and Ronaldo were doing unreal numbers, doing things you've never seen before, Barcelona, Real Madrid, El Clasico, that culmination of things really came together to bring me into the sport, as well as a young hot talent like Neymar. These combination of factors led me to my first soccer game. I went to Chelsea versus Man City at Yankee Stadium, and in this situation, I had no team, I had no loyalties, and I knew no players. So I ended up picking Chelsea, and I would consider myself lucky. Maybe not now, but I saw amazing players like Fernando Torres, Juan Mata, Eden Hazard, to the Ivanoviches and Petr Cechs, Lampard. I can continue to go on, but I came in at a great time. It was a great age of soccer, and I literally knew nothing. I was completely new to this whole sport, and I wanted to learn. So while I could watch a game in the weekend and not really understand what was happening, I kind of needed something a little bit more to teach me what was going on and what I was watching. I could see the crowds were amazing and that people got really, really into the sport. But for me to really appreciate things, I needed to learn. And for me to do that, I didn't collect cards. I went to FIFA. FIFA was the perfect place for me. It had all the concepts of collecting cards when I was a kid and wrapped it all into one place here in FIFA. It had a marketplace, packs, and players. You know, it goes incredibly in depth on the game, and I really like that aspect of it. It allowed me to sink my teeth into the sport fully, from the EPL down to the Eredivisie. I was able to learn players. However, there's a major flaw with FIFA, and especially spending money on the game to get these packs. And that's the fact that after every year, you restart the cycle. You lose all progress, and the new game comes out. And I did this for years. I became someone who woke up on the weekends. I mean, I simply slept in as late as possible. Baseball's not until 1 p.m. And soccer completely changed that. 8 a.m. schedule and time change turned me into a person who woke up in the mornings. Not only that change, but I also wanted to travel more. I had never had any desire formally to leave the United States to do anything besides visit ballparks. But that completely flipped on its head. I wanted to see these games in person for myself. While Chelsea and Man City was great, the American crowd doesn't get going like the European crowd. And so to see that in person became a quick priority for me, and I became interested in traveling. My first introduction to Europe was to go to Stamford Bridge, where I watched Chelsea versus Liverpool, and as well, I saw Derby County and QPR face off in the EFL Championship final. Both games incredible, right? I had to go back. I had to do more after that trip. And so I went to the UCL Champions League final in Germany, where I watched MSN play Juventus. By this time in 2015, I fully understood the magnitude of what I was seeing. A Champions League final with Messi in it was a dream. I eventually saw him win it, and everyone knew around this time he was starting to become a serious GOAT in soccer. But for me personally, while seeing Messi was cool, it was also great to see Neymar, a prospect at Santos, when I first started watching, kind of bud into this iconic player in this moment within the 2015 Champions League final that I got to be at. It was super cool. And so these experiences, really contributed to me wanting to go back more and more. I went to Italy, where I saw Rome play, and then I went to France, where I saw Messi play at PSG. And then the same weekend, I saw Ronaldo play at United. So traveling has become a big part of my soccer experience and something new that I didn't really expect. However, there was one flaw, and that was in the fact that despite learning about soccer for 7 years and feeling the same exact way as I did when I was younger with baseball, I never once thought to collect soccer cards. I completely forgot my years of collecting and never considered bringing it over here. But that was until 2019. After graduating from college, I returned home to my baseball card collection. And upon doing some reorganizing, I came across one very special Beckett magazine, and that was the 2014 World Cup Prism Beckett promotion. This was really the first time that I had remembered ever seeing soccer in any way on a Beckett magazine upon 10 years of getting the monthly subscription. The 2014 World Cup is extremely special to me because it was my first that I knew every single player, and my excitement levels were at an all-time high for this one. It did not disappoint. And so after seeing this Beckett magazine, I wanted to buy some cards from this set. I realized I have a whole baseball card collection, so let's sell some of that and maybe buy some soccer. I wanted to dip my toes in the water and not go too crazy. I realized that 2014 World Cup Prism was gaining a little bit of steam at this time, and I thought, what's a better, cheap way to do this while I know absolutely nothing? I had my background in baseball, so I knew, who makes cards, and some of the basics. But I thought the best way to do it was to buy some of the old FIFA legends I had that I could no longer access in the old games and could immortalize through a cheap collection. And so I did, and I watched. This allowed me to buy cheap cards that meant a lot to me, while also seeing the absolute carnage that was taking place in the rise up of 2014 World Cup Prism, ironically the set that I just found, rediscovered, and wanted. And a lot of the market was totally it was mayhem at the time. There was the first demand for soccer cards for the first time in its history, honestly, where there was really no graded supply versus all these other sports that have years, decades of graded cards through BGS and PSA. For the first time, there was a drop of demand, and cards were taking off, base cards were getting expensive, and things were getting crazy. And so while I was selling all the baseball cards I could, I was learning everything about the soccer card market and its history. I realized real quick there was tons of opportunity. And a lot of that opportunity was outside of what was already graded. As well as that, there was a whole world of stickers versus cards. I had seen stickers in the past, and particularly in Europe, where it's definitely part of the culture, but whereas cards are not at all. Cards are a vastly American thing, whereas the English particularly might see stickers in their grocery stores and collect them and stick them in sticker books. Totally different dynamics to both, and stickers were very popular at the time. But yeah, very new concept to me as a American sports card collector. There was really a clash taking place for the first time of these two markets coming together. And as well, on the modern and vintage side, I had known from baseball that vintage really carries the market. Whereas with soccer, it was clear that vintage was not the foundation of this market. It was quite rare to even find a graded slab of anything pre-80s. That's certainly not to say there was none. However, my expectation upon coming into soccer cards is that honestly, this market would be built out. I would be able to get Eusebio's rookie card anytime I wanted. However, that was not the case. And I knew that PSA ran the market. From every sport, from baseball down to hockey, PSA was graded out throughout their many years of the market existing. However, with soccer, this being completely new made it unattainable to get many of the cards that you wanted. PSA run the market, BGS suck. Despite raising me up through my childhood, they've completely thrown their company in the fire and disrespected every collector that's ever submitted a card to them. Especially in soccer, they're egregious and don't care about us. As for PSA, they try their best and are definitely the number one. I collect exclusively PSA in my collection, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. I like the uniformity of it, and it's the way of me seeing a card as the end of its lifespan. That for me is what I've been collecting exclusively, really is just PSA slabs. The last observation is a really easy one for anyone coming into the market, and that's to see that soccer is, even to this day, probably the fifth most collected sports card genre. It is below all the other American sports, and that really should go to emphasize how American focused this place is. This doesn't make sense to me. As the world becomes more global, I simply think even if Europeans do not collect cards, that Americans will find themselves more and more in soccer. It's a growing sport, particularly here in the States, and people like myself are being introduced. Things like Messi in Miami are helping Americans learn about this sport, and those are really the big drivers of the sports card market. It'd be great if more Europeans get involved, but that community is so young. It's really the first time they've done card shows in the last 2 years, and I think there's a handful of card shops that exist. There's a lot of dynamics here at play that got me really excited when I saw that soccer was really the fifth most popular card collecting genre. It simply doesn't make sense, and I think in the future it'll age better than a lot of the sports that are seeing exposure and attention right now. A lot of that has to do with opportunity that's left, a lot of cards that need to be graded, a lot of supply that needs to be filled, and a glaring difference between our market, baseball, football, and basketball is that they're fully explored. Their markets have been built out through years, and ours is really just starting. So after converting my baseball cards that I no longer had nostalgic value for into a soccer card collection, that's really when the Fisker Karma Instagram account was born, and I started to document my process in building a collection. Now in 2024, I've built out my collection, and it's clear that soccer cards was the perfect home for me. I've since then been to card shows, read books, been in Discords, and watched a lot of YouTube. I'm going to include my favorite channels here, and it really goes to show that I'm still absorbing information and learning every day. There's a ton of niches within this niche. Another note here is that soccer cards for me is a collectible. I don't necessarily view it as an investment in the same way I view a stock. I do think a lot of the product of cards going up and down is simply a result of excess liquidity. And I think there's opportunity at all times in cards. There's a lot of arbitrage to be played, but it's also difficult to find liquidity, and it's a heavily inefficient market. For me, I put my money into other markets much before soccer cards. Soccer cards are for fun, and this is going to be my little disclaimer for this video. With that being said, now it's time for the fun stuff. And there were areas of the high-end soccer card market that interested me. And first was 2014 World Cup Prism. I alluded to that earlier, and it was the magazine that I saw that sparked this whole thing. However, it's not just personal connection. There's also incredible fundamentals with this set that I believe will kind of help it last in the long term. The Prism brand is very popular, and it went through a wild grading boom. There are over 1,000 plus graded base cards of these three guys, and for many of the players of the set, it's really their first high-end card. One wild stat with this set is the condition rarity. We hear condition rarity a lot, but with this set, I do think it is relevant. Messi has 118 graded variation numbered cards. Out of 118 of those, 21 are 10s. It gets crazy. With Ronaldo, there's 121 graded variations, 8 PSA 10s. And then Neymar with 94 and only 6 PSA 10s. So that goes to show just how incredibly difficult it is to gem these. I've seen this myself. I've graded a ton, and it's a very low success rate. This set has huge appeal in the difficulty of collecting it, as well as a great card for many players that didn't have it previously. I am also a Derby County fan, and Steve Bloomer and Billy Meredith would be the two players you're going to see if you go way back to the Isles of history of soccer. They're really the first two notable players, but Steve Bloomer, for me personally, his playing career was crazy. He was the top goal scorer at the time, and not just that, but he played baseball in England. Bloomer, after an incredible playing career of being one of the first paid players and the first player with a shoe deal, went on to go coach. And he was on the train going to Germany when World War I started. He got taken into a concentration camp called Ruhleben. Ruhleben was in Germany, where somehow he lived in horse stables with 32 other people. And despite this, with soccer being so young, he was a notable name in the prison camp. People did know him, and through one miracle or another, he was allowed to start a soccer league with a few other players that were taken into this camp and forced to live there for 4 years. He said that this rose the spirits of all those in the prison camp and kept them alive. Even after this terrible experience, he was freed to the Netherlands, where he went on to go coach. He went on to win a Copa del Rey against Real Madrid, and then he finished his life at Derby County back again, where he was a grounds crew manager. And I just think this story is incredible. I'm going to go on to tell it a little bit more in some more videos, but there's the basis for why Steve Bloomer is the pinnacle of my collection. With Bloomer in 2014 Prism being extremely difficult to find, it keeps me at bay, and I can't just buy any card I want at the drop of a hat. I have to be extremely patient. Now, where I can get a little more exploratory is within the player collecting, and I want to collect the best. And for me, I want to collect the best three of my generation, and that's with Messi, Ronaldo, and Neymar. Both Messi and Ronaldo are GOATs to me. I've seen Messi win the World Cup and him do incredible things throughout his career, But despite that, Ronaldo is still my favorite player. And I have to put him in the GOAT category because of that. I think it would be disrespectful not to. And I think especially here in the hobby, we've, completely disregarded Ronaldo. And that's very much okay. That's simply the sentiment right now. But I just think that these two are in tandem with each other for the rest of time. But maybe the most controversial of these opinions is that Neymar is the clear number 3 of this generation. Despite his career being finished at 30, I think he cultivated the attention of everyone from 2012 up until this period. He is one of the most fun players I ever got to see. And I do think he is above Luis Suarez, Lewandowski, and Modric for that third spot, and also synonymous with Messi, especially, where he just is the best talent we've seen with the ball on his feet, at least since I've been here. And I will continue to collect his cards because I simply love Neymar and all he's provided me in terms of entertainment through my years of watching the sport. I collect other players like Pulisic and Haaland, as well as a few others that you can find on my Instagram. But these are really the top 3 that I want to put the focus of my funds into when I'm looking outside of the top 2 priorities. I also wanted to include some hot takes here from my time just being in the hobby, absorbing information. And first and foremost, boxes, repacks, and breaks are a new hot thing that I've seen since being here. And while boxes used to be something that I did quite frequently, I opened boxes and I enjoyed it as a kid. I don't like to have fun anymore, and I open no boxes. They're more expensive now and quite frequently a waste of money. However, that's okay. That's fine. If you want to have fun, go for it. However, I think it really gets dark when you get down to repacks and breaks. This is a new thing that wasn't around when I was collecting. I hope this goes away in the hobby, and I want to see less of this. Unfortunately, people get screwed over, I guess. Screwed over is the best way to put it. Way too frequently doing these. And unfortunately, Fanatics is just leaning into this. They want kids to do breaks and gamble away their money. I really hope this hobby moves further away from gambling, but unfortunately, Fanatics, through marketing, is only choosing to appeal to kids through gambling and celebrities. It's a total miss, and I think Fanatics is a joke. Modern is not in good hands, and I'm extremely worried about the future. I think the overall market is based on excess liquidity. This is a collectibles market, but that's not to say there aren't areas within that where Messi can go up 100%. I just think the overall trend, speaking generally, is based on excess liquidity, which is also based on interest rates and all these other factors that I won't get into on this channel. Going back to the collecting side of things, in my collection, I prioritize cards before autographs. I used to prioritize patches, autographs, and some more flashy cards, but I've seen some things like on-card autographs fade over time, as well as autographs just being produced in mass. Ronaldo and Messi will be signing the rest of their lives, whereas they will not have another 2014 World Cup Prism card produced. This is just the way that I want to collect, and I still do like autographs and buy autographs. To this day, I just prefer to stay on the side of cards. As well, my final point here is that soccer cards is the most unique and difficult market to navigate. There are cards produced throughout its history in all countries, it seems, throughout the world. Basketball and football is heavily American and very easily to find what you're looking for. Not here, not in soccer cards. You have to do a lot more research to find some of the early 2014 stuff and find information. I found extreme difficulty in this, and I think the more places that people are just simply talking about soccer cards, the better. And so with that, I will leave you with a big thank you for finishing this video. I plan to make many more, and I really wanted to just start off with a basic introduction. So thank you so much for making it through, and I will see you in the next one.